Hi, this is Diana from Yarnetti's Crochet. Is your crochet too tight? Do you struggle to pull that hook through the loops? Is your hook getting stuck every time you're pulling through stitches? If that's happening, you're not doing anything wrong. This is one of the most common struggles for beginners, and it can make crochet feel way harder than it actually is. There are two main reasons why your crochet is tight. It's probably either your tools or your tension. So once you understand both, it's a lot easier to fix. So let's talk about tools, because that's something that's not all you. So yarn needs to glide very smoothly over your hook. My favorite hook for a smooth yarn glide is actually a clover hook. It's metal. It's called a hybrid hook. And when I crochet with this hook, my yarn just glides right over without getting stuck or without the yarn feeling draggy. There are some hooks that behave differently. For example, plastic hooks. Not all plastic hooks, but some plastic hooks tend to be a little bit more draggy. This happens to be a Susan Bates acrylic hook. This is not a bad little hook. It's pretty inexpensive. It's just a little bit more draggy, and it pulls on the yarn just a little bit more. It's a little bit more difficult to pull through. This particular hook is also a plastic hook. It's very, what I call draggy, non-technical term. When I try to pull through stitches, I have to do something called yanking, which I really have to yank it through the loops, and that can really cause, and I can split the yarn doing that too. That can really cause some tension issues. Now, this isn't true for all plastic hooks, so it's really important that you try a lot of hooks to find out what works best for you. Sometimes there are some materials like bamboo or wood that might work better for you. Personally, I have a hard time with some bamboo hooks. I find them really drag on my yarn, and I have to yank. I have to really yank the yarn through the loops. Do you see how I'm pulling on that? But that's just me personally. This particular hook is a boy hook. This is a vintage boy hook. I think this was made probably 30, 40 years ago. It was made in the USA, so it's pretty, I think it was my mother's hook. And this hook, if you look at the back of the neck, it's much more narrow than boy hooks that you would find today, that you would purchase. Boy hooks today, the back of the neck is a little bit wider, more like this clover hook. All these little details about hooks, believe it or not, make a difference in how tightly you crochet. So with this boy hook, because the head of the hook sticks out, this part sticks out a little bit more. This is called a tapered hook. I have to do what's called lifting. I have to lift up my golden loop. This part of these loops on the hook, this is called your golden loop. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I have to lift it up to pull my yarn through, and I tend to split if I'm not careful with this hook. So my stitches tend to be taller with this tapered hook. Watch how I have to lift it up a little bit to get the head of the hook through the loops. This particular hook is actually one of my favorite hooks. This is a vintage Susan Bates hook. It was probably made 30, 40, 50 years ago. It just glides. The metal, it just glides. It's a fabulous hook. I found it at a garage sale. About peed my pants when I saw it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they had, I ended up getting a 5 millimeter, 5.5 millimeter, and I think a 4mm hook. But it just glides. It helps the yarn just glide right over. This hook is called, this is a Lantern Moon hook. This is an ebony wood hook, and it's quite smooth, but it's called, and this is an inline hook. Susan Bates hooks are inline hooks. That means that the hook, the head of the hook is right in line with the side of the rest of the hook. These both have thumb rests. You may or may not like thumb rests, but I prefer a thumb rest. This glides pretty easily, but I do have to yank a little bit to get my hook through. This is another bamboo hook. This first one here was a Clover Takumi bamboo hook, and this one is a Chiaogu bamboo hook. And if you notice, I mean, it's amazing the differences. You can see the difference in the heads of the hooks. This hook, I really thought I was going to like it, and I really struggled with it. I have to yank quite a bit. But the thing is, everyone has a little bit different motion that they use to crochet, so it's important you have the opportunity to try some different kinds of hooks. If you have a friend that crochets or a teacher that crochets, see if they have some different hooks that you can try. You just never know what works best for you. These two hooks, and I failed to mention earlier, other than this hook, these are all 5mm hooks, or H. These are all 5mm hooks. These are both Susan Bates hooks. This one was made probably, it was manufactured probably about 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. This one was a recent purchase, and if you look at the hooks, this is the hook part of the head is much longer on the more recently manufactured one than the older one. So they're different. You can see it from this angle too. It's amazing how different they are. But they're quite smooth, and I do like a Susan Bates hook, but I do have to yank a little bit. I do have to yank. My yarn doesn't quite glide as smoothly through the loops. And the thing is, and I told you that I would talk about this golden loop a little bit, when you yarn over, insert your hook, and pull through, this loop right here is called the golden loop. This is what helps you to tighten or loosen your stitch. So if you tend to yarn over tightly, like super tightly, and you see how tight these loops are, it's going to be very difficult for you to get your hook through. So one solution is to lift that golden loop up a little bit before you yarn over to try to pull your yarn through the loops. So you need to loosen up this golden loop right here. Loosen up that golden loop, and you should be able to get through your loops when you're pulling through a little bit easier. I tend to, like, certain hooks will influence whether I yank the yarn through, whether I yank it through, or I tend to lift the yarn. Like, I tend to lift it a lot more. I lift my golden loop with a boy hook, with a tapered hook. That's just me personally. I tend to need to lift it in order to get that hook through. And I think this is one of the reasons why I really love my clover hook. I tend to be what's called a rider with my clover hook. My golden loop isn't too tall or too long or too large, and it isn't too tight. And I can very easily glide that yarn right through those loops. So this is my workhorse hook. It's my favorite hook. So as I said before, different materials, like plastic tends to be a little bit more draggy. Metal's a little bit smoother. Bamboo and wood can be a little bit more draggy. It just depends. Different hooks have different qualities, and it's important that you give yourself a chance to try different hooks, because it can have a major influence on your ease and your sense of frustration as you're crocheting. And what I really encourage people to do is, rather than buy a whole set of hooks, see if you can buy an individual hook, which is pretty tough. Sometimes hooks just come in sets now, but if you're able to purchase a single hook or borrow a hook from somebody else to give it a try, I really encourage you to do that. So, like I said, the materials of what the hooks are made out of also influence how tightly or how much you have to yank, or how much you have to pull or lift that yarn to create your golden loop. And the yarn itself also makes a big difference. This is acrylic yarn. Acrylic tends to be fairly easy to work with, although there are times when the yarn is very splitty. And what that means is the plies tend to sort of separate, and as you go to pull that yarn through the loop, sometimes you will split your yarn, which tends to happen with me. It tends to happen with tapered hooks, but it might not happen with tapered hooks with you. Everybody's a little bit different. So the other common project for beginners is a dishcloth. And a lot of times people will use 100% cotton for their dishcloth. Well, they should use 100% cotton or a nice cotton blend for their dishcloth. Some 100% cotton yarns are very splitty. Look at, I mean, this yarn is quite splitty. It's a very common yarn. I use this yarn. It's a sugar and cream. I use this yarn. I've made all kinds of things. I still buy this yarn. I still like this yarn, but I think it's a challenge for beginners to use. And especially if you have a plastic hook with cotton yarn, it's gonna make you insane. It's just gonna make you nuts, because it just drags and you have to yank and yank. And if you have any arthritis in your hands at all, it will make your hands super tired. I wouldn't recommend plastic hooks with 100% cotton. Now, there are some cotton yarns out there that are 100% cotton. They're a lot softer and they're a lot easier to manipulate. So I'm just giving you one example of 100% cotton. My favorite hook to use with 100% cotton, again, is my clover hook. I don't mind so much a metal Susan Bates hook, although again, I tend to have to yank. And that can cause my stitches to get, that can cause me to have to really do a lot of lifting of that golden loop. And what happens is I get split my yarn, first of all, and then the stitches get kind of messy looking. So personally, I like to use, if I use my clover hook with 100% cotton, like a sugar and cream, I do a lot better. I mean, I still have to yank a little bit, but that's the nature of the yarn itself. So my point is that some yarns are going to be easier to use than others. So the other thing that you need to notice, that when you're crocheting, as you know, you have your little skein or your little ball of yarn, if the flow of the yarn coming out of the skein isn't tight, like I can kind of I can lift this whole skein around just by pulling on the working yarn. You need to pull out a length of yarn so that as you're crocheting, you're not having to like yank it over and pull over the skein, which I do that. I will be crocheting along and I don't want to stop to pull out a length of yarn. I'll end up like pulling it over to try to get it to come out of the skein or out of the cake, and I end up making tighter stitches. So make sure as you're crocheting that you have a nice flow of yarn. If you're using a ball of yarn, you might want to consider putting it in a bowl, put it in a Tupperware or something, because if it's dancing around all over the place and you're chasing it, it can cause you to crochet a little bit more tightly, and it can be frustrating too. So just think about, if you're using a ball of yarn, you might want to consider using a bowl. So if your crochet feels tight, sometimes the easiest fix is just changing one of these things, such as your hook and managing your yarn or changing the yarn type. But sometimes the reason your crochet is tight, and I'm going to say this in the kindest way I can, is because of you personally, of what you may be feeling. And when you're learning to crochet, your hands are doing something completely new. This is not a natural movement. It's like learning to play an instrument or painting. Your muscles are still trying to figure it all out. So when you're trying to do this brand new skill and you're trying to figure it out, what do? You grip your hook tighter, you pull tighter. We want to control everything, and that makes our stitches tighter, which makes crochet harder, which makes us tighten up even more. And the other thing that people don't talk about very much is your state of mind while you're crocheting. If you're frustrated, or if you feel rushed or feeling pressure, you may have a tendency to crochet more tightly. And I've had this happen to myself. And I've noticed it. I was working on a big blanket, and one day my stitches were even along the sides, and the next day they got tighter. And I must have been stressed out or just maybe in a rush, because the stitches themselves were tighter. I had used the same hook, same yarn, and the stitches were tighter. So it had nothing to do with the yarn or hook. It had everything to do with me. So instead of me just saying to you, oh, you just need more practice, let's talk about what we can do that actually helps. So here's a few simple things that make a big difference. So you need to give your yarn over more space. We talked about this. That means lifting up that golden loop so that you have more room to pull your hook through those loops. You don't need to pull your yarn over tight. You don't need to pull it tight. The other thing you can do if you're a knife grip, and I'm a knifer, and I find this super helpful, is I like to use my pointer finger to gently guide or hold my yarn over on my hook. That way I don't have to pull tightly. I can just hold it gently on the hook while I'm inserting my hook into the stitch and yarning over. And I use that pointer finger to help guide and support those loops on the hook without having to yank my hook around or change my tension too much. The other thing that you can do is sometimes you just need to try, or you just might want to try a larger hook. Like this is a 5mm hook. This is a 5.5mm hook. So I just went up a 0.5 millimeter, and again, I'm using my pointer finger to guide that yarn over. And because it's a larger hook, I have a larger golden loop already. Already it's larger. and it's giving me a little bit more space to pull the head of my hook through my loops. If everything feels tight, yeah, try going up a hook size. That alone can make your crochet feel a lot easier. So the other thing is just to slow down a little bit. Sometimes we get in a rush. I know when I'm in a rush or I'm really trying to finish a row, I will crochet more tightly. So just slowing down and giving yourself time and watching your golden loop. Watch your golden loop. Are you lifting it? Are you dragging your hook through it? Or is your hook flowing pretty readily through those loops? The one thing I did want to mention is I do have a resource for you, and if you want it, just mention it in the comments. I have a resource. It's almost like a little quiz on the first page, but it's 8 pages of resources about the golden loop and analyzing your own crochet, whether you're a yanker, a rider, or a lifter, and it can help you figure out who you are as a crocheter and also help you take a look at your hooks and match the types of hooks, a tapered hook, an inline, or a hybrid hook, to your particular tension. And to talk about just the shapes of hooks and how they tend to impact stitches. So that's available if you would like to take a look at that. Mention it in the comments, and I have a free PDF. I mean, it's just free. I'll put it I'll put it. I probably could link it in the show notes. Just let me know if you would like something like that. So if your crochet is tight, try these changes first. And if you have uneven stitches along the sides of your crochet, I have a video to help fix that. Also, if you are struggling to crochet into that beginning chain, I have a video that can help you fix that as well. So I really want you to be gentle with yourself. Don't give up. Keep crocheting. And honestly, I bet you're doing a lot better than you think you are. See you next time.